A man named Rungroj announces that he'll be having his birthday party at his house. On the eve of the party, Rungroj's sons, Mavin and Fupat, come over to meet him while he's pinning a butterfly to a piece of wood. Rungroj is the billionaire owner of a diamond company called Thiva Gems, and his sons have been trying to get him to accept their requests to make an impact in the company. While Fupat suggests buying a diamond mine from his friend, Carlos, Maven believes it's better to buy and invest in a nearly bankrupt company. As they both argue about whose proposal is better, Rungroj's favorite maid, Kaimuk, enters the office to serve him tea. Kaimuk hears the man's sons arguing, so Rungroj asks what she thinks. Fupat and Mavin are shocked because they don't understand why their dad would ask a maid for her opinion. However, Kaimuk responds to Rungroj and says that since it's not a decision that must be made immediately, there's no need to rush. Rungroj likes her answer, and he says it's sad to see that his sons can't even understand something as simple as that.
ไม่เห็นต้องรีบเลย
Before the boys say anything, Rungroj sends them out and tells Kaimuk that he hopes he won't have to be bothered by them for longer. Much later, Fupat calls Carlos to inform him that his father has yet to make a decision on the purchase of the diamond mine. Even though Carlos says he'll give Fupat more time to make the deal happen, he adds that Rungroj needs to act fast because the deal won't always be available. As the call then ends, Fupat looks pissed and starts thinking of how to sway his father into buying the mine as soon as possible. Elsewhere, Maven's son, Shutter, arrives home from New York to attend his grandfather's party. His mom, Araya, looks happy about this and welcomes her son home. While they're then catching up about how his studies in New York have been, Shutter says he's happy there, but that he'll be needing 2 more cars. Before Araya approves what he wants, Maven quickly interrupts them and says that he can't believe his son wants 2 new cars just after arriving home for the first time in a while. Shutter looks disappointed to hear this.
ผมว่าคุณตามใจลูกมากไป
And Araya then goes to meet her husband to ask why he's moody. Maven says his dad keeps annoying him and that he's always trying to bring Kaimuk into their business. Despite his worries, Araya says Kaimuk shouldn't be a problem for him because she's just a servant. After a while, a maid named B informs Fupat that it's time for the party. Kaimuk also gets Rungroj ready for the event so he can head down because his guests are already arriving. Shortly after, Rungroj greets his guests and sits at the dining table. As he's then eating, Fupat tries to impress his dad by mentioning that he had a chef specially booked for the event, but Rungroj says the food is just okay. Fupat looks disappointed, and his wife, Pacha, senses it. So she tells her daughter, Kita, to stop pressing her phone at the table to avoid angering her father even more. A few minutes later, Rungroj asks Shutter when he'll be graduating, but Mavin answers the question. Rungroj immediately shuts him up because the question wasn't directed to him.
ใกล้แล้วครับพ่อ อีกแค่ปีเดียวครับ
As he asks Shutter again, the boy mentions that he's graduating next year. Seeing as Rungroj seems pissed with her husband for being too forward, Araya suggests giving her father-in-law the gift they got for him. Maven then gets a wristwatch presented to Rungroj, but his dad doesn't look impressed. Fupat also brings in an ancient tree for his dad while wishing him a long life, but Rungroj says he's not interested in getting any gifts from his sons because he only wants them to start behaving like men. Shortly after, he stands up and thanks all the guests for attending the party. He then calls Kaimuk to stand near him, after which he announces that she'll be his new wife. Everyone at the table is shocked by this, but Rungroj immediately makes it legal by signing a marriage document along with Kaimuk. After this, he then gives her an expensive necklace, which used to belong to his late wife. Fupat is unhappy when he sees this, but he doesn't say anything. After the party ends, Rungroj tells Kaimuk to come with him to his room. On their way, Maven congratulates his dad and asks if he'll be going on his honeymoon soon. Rungroj says he can't leave because no one will be able to take care of the company in his absence. Maven says he can do that, but Rungroj laughs and says he'd rather let a servant take control. As he walks away, Maven looks angry and stares at Kaimuk before she goes to meet Rungroj. Elsewhere, the chief maid, Yupin, goes to see Fupat while he's drinking outside. She then tells him that she knows he must be hurt to see Kaimuk wearing his late mom's necklace. She adds that Rungroj likely had his reasons, but Fupat doesn't seem to care. Yupin then tells him to at least talk to Rungroj about it, and Fupat says he will. Meanwhile, Rungroj notices that something is bothering Kaimuk, so he asks her what's wrong. She then says she feels awkward about the entire situation because of his sons.
เรื่องลูกของท่านค่ะ
However, Rungroj tells her not to worry because he'll protect her as his wife. He adds that instead of living in the maid's quarters, she can bring her things to his room so they can be together. Kaimuk likes this idea, but Fupat suddenly barges in and requests to speak to his dad privately. After Kaimuk leaves, Fupat asks why his dad disrespected his mom by giving her necklace to Kaimuk. Rungroj says it's just a necklace and that his late wife died a long time ago. Fupat still argues about it, but Rungroj says he can do whatever he wants. This angers Fupat, and he looks disgusted at his father's attitude. Later on, Mavin gets really angry and decides to speak his mind to his dad about the way he always talks down on his sons. When he gets to the room, Mavin angrily tells his dad to open the door. He eventually barges in, and Shutter looks confused as to what's happening. A few minutes later, Kaimuk returns to the building, and as she's walking around, she sees Rungroj dead on the floor after falling from the balcony in his room. She immediately screams to alert everyone in the house, who can't seem to believe what happened. Days later, Rungroj's family organizes a funeral ceremony for him. On that day, Kaimuk sits in the front row, but Araya eventually sends her away, saying the seats are only for real family members. Fupat then gives a speech to the guests about how great his father was. He adds that he'll now carry on his father's legacy by taking charge of the company. Mavin doesn't seem to like this, but he doesn't say anything. After the ceremony, he then asks his father's lawyer, Crit, about the will. Crit tells Mavin to wait until the reading, but Rungroj's youngest son says he just wants to know if someone else is on the will besides him and Fupat. Crit still doesn't say anything positive, and as he just walks away, Mavin starts wondering if Kaimuk made the cut. Elsewhere, Kaimuk asks the police chief if he'll be investigating what happened, but the man says the case has been ruled out as an accident. Kaimuk is shocked by this because she believes someone killed Rungroj, but she doesn't say anything to the police chief.
การตายของเจ้าสัวเป็นอุบัติเหตุ
As she's then mourning her late husband while being consoled by B, someone informs her that Mavin wants to see her. When she meets him, Mavin makes her join him in his car as he's leaving the house. Shortly after, he gives her a bag of money and tells her that he wants her to leave the house and forfeit her inheritance. Kaimuk says she doesn't want his money, so he angrily drops her off in the middle of the road while rain falls in the area. The next day, while the family is having breakfast, Mavin sees that Fupat is not at the table, so he asks Pacha where he went. Pacha then mentions that her husband had an urgent meeting at the office. Shortly after, Araya asks if the family will be organizing their usual polo charity event for the year. Pacha says they have to do it because it would be a great way to honor Rungroj. Araya then jokes about how Kaimuk is not yet at the dining table. Not long after, Kaimuk arrives at the table, and Araya tries to make her uncomfortable by mentioning that she came late. Kaimuk doesn't respond to this.
กว่าจะมาได้นะคะคุณแม่
But before she starts eating, Kita and Shutter abandon their food and leave the table. Araya then says that the kids probably don't like Kaimuk. She also asks if Kaimuk is offended by this, but she says she's not. As Kaimuk starts eating, she suddenly notices a strand of hair inside her food. Araya sees this and says that the maids have likely gotten sloppy because of Rungroj's death. After a while, she calls all the maids to the dining room to ask who cooked Kaimuk's food. As one of them raises her hand, Araya nearly pours the soup on her, but Kaimuk stops her and says it's unnecessary. Mavin then tells Araya to let Kaimuk deal with whoever put the strand of hair in her food. Before Kaimuk is forced to do anything, though, Pacha says it's unlikely that any of the maids did it because the hair in the food was long and red. Elsewhere, Fupat tells the members of the board about his new plans for the company. He also adds that since his brother has always brought shame to the family, it's important that they vote him out of his executive position.
เราต้องเรียกความเชื่อมั่นของพวกเขากลับคืนมา
Coincidentally, Maven arrives at work and is quickly informed of Phupat's plan, so he goes to interrupt the board meeting. He then sends everyone out before accusing his brother of trying to send him out of the company. Phupat says he doesn't want Maven to bring down their father's work with his bad attitude, but his brother says he'll never leave. Elsewhere, B serves lunch to Kaimuk in her room. Because they've always been friends, B tells Kaimuk that living in the house will only make her get subjected to hate from Rungroj's sons and their wives. She adds that they're only disrespecting her because they think she wants their money. B also says that her friend needs to leave before things get worse, but Kaimuk mentions that she can't leave just yet. As they're talking, another maid comes over to inform Kaimuk that Araya wants to see her. When they then meet,
มันเป็นหน้าที่ของฉัน
Araya takes Kaimuk to a clothing store so she can buy a dress for the upcoming charity event. While they're there, Araya tells the fashion designer what she wants for Kaimuk. She also tells Kaimuk that she's only helping her so she'll look good at the event. Elsewhere, Maven calls Crit to meet him at a restaurant. When he gets there, Crit asks what he wants, and Maven tells the lawyer that he needs his father's will altered so that he'll have the biggest share. Crit says he can't do that because he's obligated to follow his late client's wishes, but Maven insists that he wants it done. He also offers to give Crit some diamonds, but the lawyer rejects the offer. He adds that Rungroj must be turning in his grave for having a son like Maven, who wants to change his will. This gets Maven angry, and as Crit leaves, he throws the diamonds at the man.
ยังไงมึงก็ต้องเปลี่ยนพินัยกรรมให้กูอยู่ดี
Meanwhile, Phupat calls Pacha to ask if she's already planning anything for the charity event. Pacha says she's just waiting for some of their guests to accept the invitation to attend the event. She adds that she thinks Phupat should give a speech as his father's representative, and he says he'll do that. Pacha then brings up Kita's studies and says that their daughter wants to go to New York. However, Phupat says he wants her in France instead. He also warns Pacha to stop trying to convince him to do what Kita wants. Elsewhere, a maid named Caillou tells Maven that she's pregnant for him. Maven cannot believe this, and he beats her up, after which he tells her to get an abortion because he doesn't want her to keep the baby. Caillou begs him to let her keep it, but he insists that he'll send her to the streets if she doesn't obey his order. Caillou is disappointed by this.
มึงไปเอาเด็กออก
And she tells her boyfriend, Tian, who also turns out to be Maven's driver. Tian doesn't seem to mind taking care of the baby because he also believes it's his child. However, Caillou says it's better to obey their master because they don't know what he might do to them if they keep the baby. Tian then suggests running away together, but Caillou doesn't want to return to the life she lived before she became a maid at the house. Shortly after, Kaimuk goes to the security room and notices that some of the cameras outside Rungroj's room were turned off after the accident, and the footage has already been deleted. She then asks the security personnel about this, but he says he's new. He adds that since he came to the house, he has never seen the cameras on.
ตั้งแต่ผมเข้ามาทำงาน ผมก็ไม่เห็นทางดีนั้นเลย
The next day is the polo event, and Shutter is part of the players who represent Thiva Gems against their main rivals in the diamonds business, Gentle Gems. As Shutter scores to give Thiva Gems the lead, Maven looks proud of him. The owners of Gentle Gem, Pachara, and Fetty then come over to meet him so they can commend his son's performance so far. Maven immediately boasts that he taught his son to hate losing. He adds that the only way they can beat his son at the game is if they break his horse's legs. Since he believes Gentle Gems will lose eventually, Maven thanks Pachara and Fetty for at least accepting the invitation to come. Pachara then mentions that Gentle Gems are more than happy to give back to the public because of the huge profits they've made over the past few years. Maven doesn't seem to like how Pachara says this, and he mentions that Gentle Gem's recent success doesn't mean they'll continue to be successful. Almost immediately, Phupat approaches them and thanks Pachara and Fiti for coming to the event. He adds that it's good to see them put their rivalry aside and come together, as he mentions that he'd like the two companies to collaborate in the future to boost the diamond industry's potential. Maven sounds rude to their competitors. Unfortunately, Gentle Gems eventually scores the winning point in the game, and this gets Maven angry. As Pachara and Fetier then joke about how they didn't have to break any legs, Maven walks away angrily. Later that night, during the charity dinner, Kaimuk arrives at the venue and notices that she's the only one not wearing black. Fupat also sees her and looks surprised. However, Araya and Maven make fun of her. After a while, the event starts, and the announcer surprisingly calls on Kaimuk to give a speech. Kaimuk is shocked by this, but she eventually goes to the stage. Unfortunately, though, she gets too uncomfortable and tells the announcer that she can't do it. Following this, Araya climbs the stage and mentions that it seems Rungro's new wife lacks proper education. She then proceeds to give a speech while claiming to be the family's representative. Fupat and Padcha are shocked by this, but Araya keeps on talking about how she wants to honor Rungro's legacy by continuing his foundation. After she's through, Fupat storms out angrily and everyone looks surprised. A while later, Maven asks Crit if he has changed his mind, but the lawyer tells him to stop talking about changing the will. However, as Maven threatens to release an embarrassing video of his daughter, Crit sounds angry, but he's finally forced to do something about the will. Shortly after, Kaimuk leaves the venue disappointed about how she embarrassed herself in front of everyone. Meanwhile, Tien takes Kiao to the hospital to have the abortion. While she's then being attended to, Tien cries in the lobby because he really wanted her to keep the baby. Later that night, after the event, Kaimuk changes back to her work clothes and tells Araya that she no longer wants to be part of the family. However, she adds that she'd like to stay around and work in the house. Araya says it's good to see that Kaimuk finally knows her place in the house. As she then sits down, she tells Kaimuk to put her head on the floor. Kaimuk immediately obeys the order, and Araya steps on her head while the maid cries. The next day, Kita invites some friends over to check out a dress she has just designed. One of them, Abel, asks for the inspiration behind the design, but Kita just says she got it after attending a Fashion Week event. Abel then talks to Kita about getting a model to try the dress, but their other friend, Dom, suggests using B because she's the one who has been helping them hang the dress. Kita doesn't seem happy about this, but Abel and Dom don't care. After B wears the dress, the boys take her picture and also teach her how to pose. B looks happy doing this, but Kita seems jealous. As Abel and Dom then suggest getting her to wear another dress, Kita makes her uncomfortable and insults her. Shortly after, B cleans up Kita's dog, and when she's through, she gets a call from her sister, who complains about her mother's health. Since they need a lot of money for her treatment, she suggests dropping out of school to help with the money, but B tells her not to worry, because she'll have it covered. Just then, Kita enters the room and slaps B's head for answering her phone while on duty. She also asks B for the designs she has been working on, and the maid says she's almost done. It then turns out that Kita has actually been presenting B's designs to her friends as her own. Elsewhere, Yupin goes to meet Kaimuk to inform her that she needs to start working for their masters again. Yupin also says that Araya wants Kaimuk to clean the storage room that night. Shortly after, Fupat and Padcha complain to Araya and Maven about how they changed the agenda at the event the other day. However, Araya tells them it's nothing serious. Fupat then mentions that since Crit is coming over the next day to read their father's will, he wants all of them to accept whatever their father wanted, even though he knows that it will be in his favor. Maven says he'll accept the will however it comes. Later that night, while Kaimuk is cleaning the storage room, she sees one of the butterflies Rungroj used to design. She then remembers the night he asked her to marry him, while she was also trying to design one of the butterflies. Elsewhere, Kita asks Padcha if her dad has already agreed to send her to New York. However, Padcha says she still has to go to France because it's what Fupat wants. Kita sounds pissed about this, and she walks away to attend a party. While she's having fun, Shutter arrives and gets the attention of the girls at the party. This gets Kita jealous, and as she walks away, Shutter notices this and follows her because they're actually in a secret relationship. Meanwhile, B calls her boyfriend, Joke, who also happens to be Shutter's driver. Joke asks B how she's doing, and she says she's really tired because, after working throughout the day, she now needs to work on the designs Kita wants. Joke says sorry to hear about this, but before they can talk any further, Shutter shouts at him to get into the car so he can leave with Kita. The next day, Crit comes over to the house to read the will. As Kaimuk is about to leave the room, Araya tells her to wait so she can hear what Crit is about to read. Following this, Kaimuk waits and hears Crit begin by mentioning that Rungroj gave Pacha 10% of Thiva gems, while also making her president of his foundation. Interestingly, Araya is given 15% of the company and a huge sum of money. As Crit continues, he mentions that Fupat will get 30% of Thiva gems, while Maven will get 45%, making him the primary shareholder of the company. Fupat is extremely shocked by this, and he asks for an investigation of the will, but Maven reminds him of what he said the previous day about accepting whatever is in the will.
และหุ้นของบริษัทเทวาเจ
Kaimuk also looks shocked, but she can't say anything, as Fupat insists that he should have gotten the majority share as the eldest son. Crit assures him that Rungroj wanted it differently. Fupat immediately storms out of the room and Padcha follows him. As they leave, Araya looks at Kaimuk and says it must be sad to see that Rungroj left her nothing. Kaimuk doesn't say anything, but she nearly cries. Shortly after, Kaimuk decides to give back the necklace Rungroj gave her. She then goes to see Padcha and Fupat, who believes it's weird that she's suddenly giving back the necklace after she didn't get anything in the will. Kaimuk says she's just scared of what Maven might do to her because he has threatened her before. She adds that she thinks he's responsible for Rungroj's death because he was the last person to see Rungroj before he died. Fupat asks why she's just telling him, and Kaimuk says she wants him to protect her from Maven so that he won't hurt her. Fupat then asks if she has evidence of Maven being the last to see their dad, but Kaimuk says she doesn't have anything yet. However, she promises to find the evidence to prove that she's telling the truth.
จะไปไหนก็ไปเลยไป
As she then heads out and sits in front of the house, B joins her and asks if the reason she's still staying at the house is because she wants to find out what happened to Rungroj. Kaimuk confirms this, and B then says that her strength is inspiring. She also asks if Kaimuk would like to have a sleepover at her place, and she agrees. After they get to her room, B says she can't believe Rungroj was so cruel that he didn't leave anything to Kaimuk. However, Kaimuk says she's not really bothered by it. As she sees the designs on the wall, Kaimuk asks about them, and B says she drew them. This surprises Kaimuk, and she says she believes B can become a popular fashion designer one day. B says she can only dream of it because she has no money, but Kaimuk says she'll be her first customer if she ever opens a store. Suddenly, Kaimuk turns back and sees a video on B's laptop. As she plays it, B tells her that it's a clip from the camera on Kita's dog's collar. While watching the clip, Kaimuk then sees Shutter storming out of the security room on the night of Rungroj's death.
Keeper.
The next day, Fupat arrives at work, only to be told that he's no longer authorized to go to the top floor. This gets him angry, and he goes to confront Maven about it. Unsurprisingly, Maven confirms that he gave the order because he wants his brother to have less work. He adds that the top floor is now for top executives of the company only. Fupat is angry about this, but Maven says there's nothing he can do. Later that night, while B is working on her designs inside Kita's workshop, Abel and Dom see her. They then realize that B is the original owner of the designs. As they talk about how they always knew Kita wasn't talented, they're unaware that she's watching them from outside the workshop. After they leave, she then goes to confront B for letting her friends see her designing the dresses. She also makes fun of B for being too poor to use her talents to become a fashion designer. Shortly after, Kita drags B's hand and uses the sewing machine to injure the girl's thumb. B bleeds as a result of this,
แกเก่งมาก
and as she runs out crying, Joke sees her and screams angrily because he knows there's nothing they can do about it. Meanwhile, Maven hosts a party at the house to celebrate the outcome of the will and also reveal his plans for Thiva gems to the company's investors. At the party, Maven finds Shutter and says sorry for always putting pressure on his son. He also says he loves Shutter and is only training him so he can one day take over Thiva gems from him. Shutter is happy to see his father being friendly, and he asks if he can hug Maven. After they hug, Shutter then gets a text from Kita informing him to meet her in the workshop. Elsewhere, B starts setting dog food on the floor so that Kita's dog can find its way to Kita's workshop to expose Kita's relationship with Shutter using a projector. During the event, while Maven is giving a speech, B's plan works, and Araya immediately passes out. Fupat, Padcha, and Maven are also shocked because they've now been publicly embarrassed by their children.
I think we should go back there.
Almost immediately, Fupat goes to confront his daughter, but Padcha begs him not to hurt her. Maven also meets Shutter and calls him a disgrace. However, Shutter says he knows that his dad is not a saint. He also adds that he knows what Maven did. As Maven looks confused, it turns out that Shutter saw his dad entering Rungror's room before he fell from the balcony. After he saw this, he then went to the security room to shut down the cameras and steal the hard drive. As Maven asks Shutter what he thinks he knows, the boy just walks away, saying he might as well just expose his dad. While the chaos is happening, Kaimuk enters Shutter's room to look for the hard drive because she knows he went into the security room after Rungroj died. After a while, she finds it, but before she can escape, Shutter enters the room, so she has to quickly hide. Shutter then looks for the hard drive in the place he kept it, but he doesn't see it, as his dad immediately enters his room to ask what he knows. Shutter just leaves the house in his car. Following this, Kaimuk finally escapes and hides the hard drive. After Shutter leaves, Maven immediately tells Joke to follow him and bring him back. As Shutter is driving, though, an unknown biker stops him and beats him up. Unfortunately, this lands Shutter in the hospital, and after Araya arrives, the doctor tells her that even though her son is now stable, there's still a risk of severe complications. Elsewhere, Maven goes to see the owner of the hospital to threaten him that if Shutter dies, he'll withdraw all the support his company has been giving the man. Following this, he then goes to meet Joke, who appears to have also been beaten by the biker after reaching the scene. Maven pretends to be sorry for him, but as Joke mentions where he got hurt the most, his boss presses it down so he can feel more pain. He then complains about how Joke failed to save his son. After he leaves, Joke remembers a time from the past when Shutter just left a party drunk and requested to drive. On the way home, he drives recklessly, and Joke begs him to park so he can take over. Shutter doesn't listen to his driver, and he eventually hits someone on the road. The person dies instantly, but instead of taking the fall for it, Shutter begs Joke to sit in the driver's seat and pretend to be the one driving. Joke says he can't do that, but Shutter says his life is more important than his driver's own. He adds that he'll have his dad sort the whole thing to make sure Joke doesn't spend a long time in jail. As Joke is left with no choice, he enters the car, after which Shutter calls his dad to inform him that his driver just knocked someone down with his car. Back to the present, Fupat looks disgusted by what happened, and he continues to read the stories already published on the internet about the scandal. Suddenly, Padcha suggests calling her dad to help Shutter in any way he can, because he runs one of the biggest hospitals in the country. However, Fupat sounds angry and tells her that Shutter doesn't deserve their help. Even though Padcha doesn't agree with this, she listens to her husband and decides against calling her dad. Shortly after, Kita tells her mom mom that she's going to see Shutter in the hospital because she needs to be there for him. Pacha cannot believe this, and she tells her daughter to stay back because her dad must not hear of what she wants to do. As they're arguing about it, Fupat enters the room and hears Kita talking about going to see Shutter. This gets him angry and he lashes out at Kita for even thinking about leaving the house after embarrassing him and the family. However, Kita doesn't care about this, and she says that her parents are just jealous because they know she likes Shutter more than them. She adds that she needs to be there for Shutter because he always had her back whenever she needed help. Fupat then realizes that Shutter was the reason she wanted to go to New York. He then says she can now go there while Shutter lies in a coma.
ขอว่าเล่มแอมนึงครับ
Kita gets angry after hearing this, but Pacha tells her to remain calm while she tries to speak to Fupat privately. After he heads out, Pacha tells him to wait so she can talk to him. She then begs him to let Kita go to the hospital because she's obviously in pain. Fupat is shocked to hear this, and he asks if his wife really has no problem with what happened. Pacha doesn't say anything about this, and Fupat just walks away. Later that night, Kaimuk sees B in the laundry room and asks if she was the one who ruined the event by uploading the embarrassing video. B confirms this and says that they had it coming. As she then sits with the dog later on, Maven realizes that she was the only one who could have done it, so he decides to punish her. The next day, Kaimuk hears Yupin assigning B's tasks to someone else, so she asks about her friend. Yupin then says that B is taking a break and might not be at work for a while. Kaimuk doesn't seem to believe this, and she wonders if something has happened to her friend.
คงไม่ได้มาที่นี่สักพัก
Later that day, she shows Fupat and Pacha the video of Maven entering Rungroj's room before the old man died. As Fupat sees it, he realizes that his brother really planned everything all along. The following day, Fupat calls a detective to the house to report that he thinks his father's death was not an accident. The detective mentions that there wasn't any evidence of wrongdoing, but Fupat shows him the video. The detective then asks why he didn't mention it earlier, and he says he didn't think his brother could do something so bad until the will pointed out that something was fishy. Following this, the detective requests to interview all the maids in the house. During the interview, most of the maids point out that Maven was really angry about his dad's decision to marry Kaimuk. Some of them also mention that they saw him running to his dad's room angrily before the man was found dead. When Kaimuk is interviewed, she mentions that when she was coming back from the maids' quarters, after Rungroj told her to bring her things to his room, she saw someone in his balcony. With everything pointing toward the possibility that Maven killed Rungroj, the detective thanks Fupat for his cooperation and tells him that he'll make sure his brother is brought in for questioning. As Maven arrives home, though, the detective receives a call from his boss. Instead of then arresting Maven, the detective just greets him and leaves. As Maven enters the house freely, Fupat looks stunned. He immediately calls the detective to ask what happened, and the man says he got an order to close the case and forget about it. Fupat is shocked by this, and he wonders how his brother did it. After a while, someone calls Maven to inform him that they've found the person who attacked his son. The person also asks if he should take care of it, but Maven says he'll handle it himself. As he then calls Kaio over, he asks her what she would do if someone she raised turned their back on her. Kaio then says that where she's from, such a person would be taught to know their place.
มันแหวงกัดกูอะ
Later that night, while Kaimuk is in Rungroj's greenhouse, Pacha comes in to see her. She then says it's nice to see someone still taking care of the greenhouse. Kaimuk says it's nothing, but Pacha mentions that it's unfair to see that the police can't do anything about the evidence she found. Kaimuk then says that being wealthy must be so nice because it makes it easy for people to change wrongs to rights. She adds that it also comes with a certain level of power, but Pacha says that not every wealthy person has such power.
ไม่ค่อยได้มีใครมีโอกาสเข้ามาที่เรือนนี้มาก
The next day, Kaimuk decides to go to B's house to look for her. Before she leaves the Rungroj residence, Kaimuk calls B's phone several times, but her line doesn't connect. She then sends a text informing B that she's coming to her house. On her way out, she sees some of the other maids setting up a projector in the living room, so she asks about it. One of them then says that Maven was the one who requested for it to be set up. She adds that he likely wants to show them a movie. As one of the other maids then talks about how it's a good initiative, Kaimuk wonders what Maven must really be up to. Elsewhere, Fupat arrives at work and sees that his things have been taken out of his office on Maven's orders. This gets Fupat angry, and he goes to confront Maven in front of a client. Maven then says he has fired Fupat for trying to involve the police in their business. He adds that Fupat can now start his retirement because he's never coming back.
มึงไม่มีสิทธิ์ไม่มีอำนาจในบริษัท
After he leaves the office, Fupat calls the detective again to ask when Maven will be arrested, but the man says he's no longer in charge of the case because he was reassigned after he left the Rungroj residence. Fupat then asks for his evidence, but the detective tells him that he no longer has it. Elsewhere, Kaimuk goes to B's house, but she realizes that her friend is not there. She also meets B's neighbor, who says that B hasn't been home in months. Kaimuk looks shocked by this, and she starts to wonder where B went. That night, Maven calls Joke to enter his car while Tien drives them away from the house. Shortly after, Maven asks Tien what he should do to Joke for letting his son get hurt, but his driver doesn't say anything. Maven then tells both of them to step out of the car.
มึงสองคนลงจากรถ
After they do this, Maven tells Tien to push Joke off the bridge. However, Tien says he can't do it. He then confesses that he was the one who beat up Shutter. This gets Maven angry, and he brings out a gun to hit Tien, after which he kicks him several times. He then asks why Tien did it, and the driver says that Maven killed his child first. Maven realizes that he's talking about Caillou, but he doesn't seem to care. After a while, he points the gun at Joke and threatens to kill him if he doesn't push Tien off the bridge. Joke doesn't want to do this, and Tien says he doesn't have to. He adds that he just needs Joke to take care of Caillou for him. Just then, Tien falls off to his death, leaving Tien devastated while Maven doesn't seem to care. It then turns out that Joke knew Tien was responsible for beating up Shutter. After he got to the scene on the day Maven told him to follow Shutter, he realized that Tien was the biker and even tried to stop him. Since the deed was already done, though, Joke then told his friend to beat him up so that it would look like he also got beaten by the person who attacked Shutter. Elsewhere, Kaimuk arrives home only to see that the movie Maven wanted to show the maids is a live recording of B inside a cage while in pain. Kaimuk and the other maids are shocked to see this, but there's nothing they can do. Meanwhile, Pacha takes Kita to the airport so she can head to New York for her studies. The next day, Fupat hears Maven talking about striking a deal with Carlos to buy his diamond mine. Fupat immediately goes outside to confront his brother about stealing his idea. Maven then says that he suddenly changed his mind about the idea because he heard that Gentle Gems is interested in buying the mine. Fupat says he can't just do that because Carlos is his friend.
ไหนมึงเคยบอกว่าเหมืองเพชรกับคาร์ลอสมันไร้
But Maven says he doesn't care. He adds that as the president of Thiva Gems, he has the responsibility of making Carlos a potential business partner. As Fupat still objects to this, Maven gives him a flyer of a property he wants his brother to move to. Fupat is shocked by this, but Maven says he wants him out of the house by the end of the week. He then walks away to meet his wife, who has just returned from the hospital with no positive update on their son's health. Elsewhere, Pacha calls Kita to ask how she's doing in New York. She says it's not so bad, but she seems more concerned about knowing what's up with Shutter's health. Pacha then says that Shutter's health isn't improving. Kita doesn't look happy to hear this, but Pacha says she'll still try to convince Fupat to bring her back. Almost immediately, Fupat enters the room to look for Pacha. He then asks about Shutter's health, and she says that his health is getting worse. She adds that if he doesn't get a heart transplant as soon as possible, he might not make it. Fupat asks how soon he'll get a transplant, but Padcha says it all depends on when the family finds a donor. Since he knows that Padcha's father can help, Fupat tells her to call him to do whatever is needed to save Shutter. Padcha is happy about this, but Fupat tells her that before giving Shutter the new heart, she needs to make Araya give up her shares at Thiva Gems so that he'll finally get the majority share. Padcha is shocked to hear this, and she asks if he really wants Araya to pick between her shares and her son's life. Fupat says it's what he wants, and that Padcha needs to get it done. A while later, Kaio notices that Tien is nowhere to be found, so she starts getting worried that something might have happened to him. That night, after work, she then finds Joke and asks for Tien. Joke doesn't know what to say, and Kaio immediately understands that he's dead. This leaves her devastated, but Joke consoles her before leaving. The next day, Padcha goes to the hospital to tell Araya that her dad can help Shutter.
ยังไม่ได้คิวเลยค่ะ
Araya is happy about this, and she thanks Padcha for helping. Before she gets too comfortable, though, Padcha tells her that she'll have to give up all her shares at Thiva Gems for her to be able to get a new heart for her son. Araya looks shocked to hear this, but as Padcha confirms that it's what she wants, Maven's wife realizes that Fupat and his wife are trying to exploit the situation to their benefit. Elsewhere, Kaimuk takes care of Bee in her room, while Joke stays outside. Kaimuk then says sorry to Bee for not being there to help her. However, Bee says it's not anyone's fault and that she brought it upon herself. Shortly after, Kaimuk goes out to convince Joke to go inside to see Bee, but he says he doesn't want to see her in her current state. Kaimuk then asks if he even spoke to Maven to forgive Bee, but Joke says there was nothing he could have done. Kaimuk still insists that he should have tried to do something, and as he doesn't respond to this, she walks away angrily. The next day, Yupin informs the maids about a private party that Maven wants to have on a yacht. While she says that some of them will remain in the house, she calls out Kaimu, Bee, Kayu, and Joke to be part of the crew that will go on the yacht to help out with the party. Elsewhere, Padcha's dad delivers a new heart to the hospital where Shutter is being treated. Araya thanks Padcha for this and hands over an envelope containing a document to confirm that she's giving up all her shares. Padcha decides to open it to confirm what's inside, but as she sees Araya staring at her, she closes the envelope and heads out. When she gets to the car, Fupat is already waiting for her, and she gives him the envelope. He then asks if Araya gave up her shares as expected, and Padcha says she did. Following this, Fupat calls someone on the phone and talks about how he'll soon take control of Thiva Gems again.
I'm actually not available today.
As he arrives home, Maven thanks him for getting Padcha to help secure a new heart for his son. Fupat then asks why he stayed at home instead of being at the hospital to support his wife. Maven says he had an important meeting, but Fupat tells him that he won't need to attend more meetings because he now has the majority share of the company. Surprisingly, Maven laughs at him and asks how he expects to take control of the company with only 1% extra. Fupat is shocked to hear this, and Maven tells him that his shares at the company have increased because his wife gave him all but 1% of her shares. He adds that the last 1% was what she gave to Fupat in the envelope. As Fupat looks pissed, Maven says he can't believe his brother could make such a silly mistake of not verifying the shares. Following this, Fupat
กูให้เขาโอนไว้ที่กูก่อนแล้ว
angrily runs to meet Padcha, who is on the phone with her dad. He immediately drags the phone from her and tells her to inform her dad to cancel the transfer and take the heart back. Padcha sounds confused because it's already too late, so Fupat insults her for not verifying the shares before she left the hospital. Later that night, Fupat then burns Araya's document and realizes that he might never get to take control of Thiva Gems. The next day, Maven hosts his private party and invites Carlos so they can strike a deal. Carlos seems happy to be there, but he eventually asks why Fupat is not around. Maven then says that his brother had a really important meeting to attend. Carlos eventually forgets about this, and he continues enjoying the party. Shortly after, while Maven is surfing, he suddenly sees Fupat chatting with Carlos on the yacht. This gets him pissed, and he immediately climbs back on the yacht to interrupt their conversation. To ensure Carlos doesn't hear what they're talking about, Maven speaks in Thai and asks what Phupat is doing on the yacht. Phupat says he just came to see his friend, and Maven tells him that if he ruins the deal, he won't let it slide. Phupat laughs at this and realizes that Maven hasn't told Carlos that his brother has been fired from the company. Before they talk any further, Carlos asks what they're talking about, and Phupat says he's just telling his brother that their friendship goes way back. Carlos confirms this and says that Phupat needs to tell his brother about their friendship one day. Later that night, while the men are playing a game of cards, Joke looks dejected as he heads for Mavin's boat to prepare it for when they're leaving. As he's walking away, Bee comes over to meet him. She then holds his hand and tells him not to worry because she's sure everything will go on smoothly. Following this, Joke walks to the boat and Kaimuk goes to serve Mavin a glass of wine. As she's leaving the table, Carlos asks Maven who she is, and he says she's his father's late wife.
Your old man had a good taste.
Shortly after, Maven tells Carlos to let them play a more competitive game by gambling with the cards. Carlos agrees to do this, and they immediately start playing. Unfortunately, Maven fails to make it to the final round, but Phupat does. Maven then speaks in Thai again and tells his brother to let Carlos win so that it would be easier to strike a deal with him. Phupat says he doesn't really care about the deal, but Maven continues to signal him to make the right choice. Following this, Phupat willingly loses the game and Carlos wins. He then says that he'd like to take Kaimuk with him as a prize. Maven immediately agrees to this, but Phupat doesn't say anything. Maven then enters his boat to leave with Joke, but Phupat joins them. Maven looks shocked and asks why his brother is following him. Phupat then says it's because he knows Maven is drunk. As Joke starts moving the boat, Maven asks why his brother really followed him, and Phupat says he's just curious to see how far he's willing to go to take full control of the company.
ตกลงตามกูมาทำไม
Maven then tells Phupat to give up and accept their dad's wishes. However, Phupat says he doesn't have to listen to their dad anymore because he's dead. Maven then says that Phupat has to accept that their dad wanted him in control and not his elder brother. Phupat doesn't say anything, but after Maven continues drinking heavily, he accuses his elder brother of killing their dad. He also says he knows that Phupat always hated their dad, and it's also why Groj decided against letting him run the company because he seems bent on ruining it. Just then, Maven looks really drunk and falls down. Joke immediately tries to lift him up and push him inside the water, but he's too heavy to lift. Instead of complaining about what Joke is about to do, Phupat decides to do it by himself because it was his plan all along to kill his brother while on the way home from the boat. It also turns out that he planned it with Kaimuk and the other maids as well. Following this, Phupat lifts his brother and looks into his eyes before throwing him into the water to drown. After a few minutes, Phupat then tells Joke to set the boat on fire so they can stage the death to make it look like an explosion blew up the boat and ultimately killed Maven. Joke immediately sets it on fire and jumps out with Phupat. The boat then blows up and everyone on the yacht looks surprised and wonders what's going on. After a while, a rescue boat arrives to save Phupat and Joke. Phupat then tells the rescue officials to look for his brother because he was also on the boat. He plays his role quite well and pretends to know nothing about the accident. Kaimuk also sees him and looks curious to know if their plan really worked. Shortly after, Araya calls Kayu to ask about her husband. Kayu then explains what happened and says that Maven is still missing. As Araya cries on the phone, Kayu puts the call on speaker so that the other maids can make fun of her. After the call ends, one of the rescuers finds Maven and calls for help to bring him out of the water. Kayu immediately looks disappointed and asks why Joke couldn't kill him before throwing him into the water. Joke says it wasn't easy, but Kayu says she would have done it if she was the one on the boat. Joke then gets angry at this and walks away. Meanwhile, Kaimuk realizes that their entire plan could now end with them being arrested, so she goes to tell Phupat that he needs to do something about it. Following this, Phupat runs to the ambulance carrying Maven and tells the driver to take take his brother to a really far hospital. The man says Maven might die on the way, but Fupat doesn't seem to care. He also bribes the driver by giving him his expensive wristwatch. The driver then gladly accepts this and lets Fupat join the ambulance as well, while a nurse then tries to revive Maven. Fupat remembers moments from their childhood when his younger brother would always act smart or cheat at games, which would eventually make their father punish them. One time, Fupat broke some of his dad's most precious items out of anger, but Yupin took the blame for it. Fupat sees this, and while Yupin is serving her punishment, he says sorry for putting her in trouble. She then tells him that he needs to stop destroying his father's things, but Fupat says he won't stop because he hates Rungroj. Yupin then hugs him because she knows that Rungroj has sometimes been unfair to Fupat. In the present day, the nurse eventually fails to revive Maven, and he dies. Days later, Fupat organizes a funeral for his brother and gives a speech about how he loved his brother and the way he ran the company. He then closes his speech by saying that he'll now be taking over control of the company. The next day, Fupat gives Yupin some money to share with the maids in the house to thank them for their part in helping him reclaim his inheritance. After she gets her money, Kaimuk goes to return it to Fupat. He then asks if she wants more, but she says she can't take it. However, she asks if she can organize a small ceremony for Rungroj because it's nearly 100 days since he died.
เราควรเริ่มเตรียมงานเลยหรือเปล่าคะ
Fupat allows her to do it, and he also texts Crit to ask about the inheritance. Later that night, Crit finally picks Fupat's call. Fupat then tells him that since his brother is dead, he wants to know if he can transfer the inheritance to his name. Crit says he's already living abroad because of Maven, and as Fupat asks what he means, the lawyer confesses that his younger brother made him change the will to favor him. Fupat is shocked to hear this, and when he gets home, he breaks all of Maven's portraits in the house. He also accuses Araya of knowing about it, but she denies it. As she then cries, Fupat pours a bottle of wine on her because he doesn't believe her. The next day, while he's having breakfast, Fupat complains about the quality of the food and asks the maids if they're getting sloppy because he has always been kind to them. Yupin tries to take the meal from him, but he shouts at her to leave his side. He then warns the maids that he won't tolerate any mistakes in the house.
ต้องเป็นมาวินหรือพ่อใช่ไหม
Later that day, he goes to meet Pachara and Fetier to propose a major deal to them. When the men finally sit with him, Fupat says he'd like to sell Thiva gems to them. Pachara and Fetier are shocked to hear this, but Fupat tells them that they don't have to make a decision immediately. He adds they can come to his house that night to talk further about the deal. Elsewhere, Kaimuk goes to the police department to ask for another autopsy to be carried out on Rungroj. The police chief then asks why she wants the case reopened, and she says it's because she believes he was murdered. Later that night, Padcha tells Fupat that she wants to leave him, and he says she can. She then asks for a share of his inheritance as a way to appreciate her for helping him, but he says he won't give her anything. Padcha is shocked to hear this, and she reminds him of a promise he made to her in the past that he'd let her leave with some of his money, but he says he doesn't care anymore. A few minutes later, Pachara and Feti visit Fupat at the house. While they're having dinner, he mentions that he really wants to sell Theva gems, and this leaves Kaimuk, Yupin, and the other maids shocked. Pachara then asks why he wants to sell it, and he says it was his father's dream and not his. As he's asked what his dream is, Fupat says he just wants to live his life freely. Fupat then asks for their decision, but the men say they'll think about it. Almost immediately, Fupat offers to make the decision easier for them, so he tells them that they can also have the house as part of the deal. Pachara and Fetier are shocked to hear this, but Fupat says the house belongs to his dad, and he doesn't want it anymore. Yupin and the other maids are also shocked, but they can't say anything. After a while, Pachara and Fetier decide to leave. Fupat then escorts them out and tells them to make their decision as soon as possible. As they leave, Yupin tells Fupat not to sell the house, but he warns her to remember that she's just a maid. He also says he knows that all the maids don't care about him or his family. He then throws some money at Yupin and walks away. While Yupin sits outside to think about what Fupat is about to do, Kaimuk goes to sit with her. She then tells Yupin not to blame herself for how Fupat turned out. However, Yupin says it's partly her fault for indulging him and allowing his hatred for his father to grow. A while later, Pacha decides to leave the house, and she sees Kaimuk outside. She then tells Kaimuk that she's sorry for not being able to help her as she intended. However, Kaimuk tells her not to worry because she'll handle everything. The next day, Crit arrives at the house to see Fupat and show him the real will. It then turns out to be video recording in which Rongroj mentions that he wants all his assets and shares to go to Kaimuk and any child she has for him.
และทายาทที่เกิดจากไข่มุกเท่านั้น
Fupat is shocked by this, but he notices that Kaimuk was there when the will was being recorded. Fupat then realizes that Kaimuk has been playing him and his family since Rongroj died. Almost immediately, he looks around the house for her. When he eventually sees her, he accuses her of killing Rongroj, but she just smiles. Kaimuk then remembers the first day she arrived at Rongroj's house to interview as a maid.
ถ้าทำไม่ได้ก็กลับไปเถอะ
After she got the job, she noticed that the maid staying next door, Dao, was always arriving home late and crying often. Days later, Kaimuk meets Rongroj for the first time, and he seems quite nice to her. As Kaimuk tells some of the other maids about it, they're left shocked because Rongroj never speaks to any of them. Dao hears Kaimuk talking about this, and she leaves the dining area angrily. As Kaimuk wonders if it's something she said, the other maids tell her not to be bothered because Dao always acts weird. It then turns out that Dao is one of Rongroj's victims of harassment, and it's also why she comes home late at night. Unfortunately, she eventually kills herself in the house, and Kaimuk feels sorry for her. After Kaimuk realized that Rongroj was a bad person who also acted nice to her, so she could be Dao's replacement, she hated him for it and tried running away from the house. However, she decided against it and chose to make him like her. Her plan eventually worked, and he made her his personal maid.
เก็บไว้ดีๆนะ
She also pretended to have an interest in butterflies, just like him. One day, while Rongroj complains about his sons, Kaimuk offers to give him better children. Following this, he decided to marry her and make her the sole beneficiary of everything he owns. Fupat cannot believe all Kaimuk went through to take over her father's fortune, but she also confesses that it was the butterflies she kept in Rongroj's office that flew toward him and made him fall from his balcony. However, she switches the story and blames Fupat for it. She also shows him that she has proof of him pushing Maven inside the water. Fupat is shocked to hear this, but Kaimuk tells him that Joke planted a camera on the boat. She adds that his entire family were mean to the maids and drivers, and it's why they agreed to bring them down together.
กูรู้ชีวิตมึงหมดนั่นแหละ
Fupat gets angry and grabs Kaimuk so he can strangle her, but before he does so, all the maids come out of hiding and record him with their phones. As he realizes what's happening, he leaves Kaimuk alone. She then tells him that he has to either forget about his dad's fortune or stay to fight it. She adds that if he chooses to fight her, she'll use all the evidence she has against him to bring him down. Fupat is shocked by this, but before he even says anything, the maids remember everything his family did to them, so they push him to the floor and beat him. Days later, Fupat changes his look and leaves town. He then sits at a bar where he watches Pacha being asked by reporters if she believes her ex-husband really killed his father based on new evidence that has surfaced. Pacha says she didn't think he was that brutal, and as more questions are asked, Fupat gets angry and locks his phone. On his way out of the bar, though, some robbers see his expensive wristwatch and ask for it. As he refuses to give them, one of them stabs him and runs away with the watch, while leaving him to die. Elsewhere, Shutter's heart surgery fails, and this leaves Araya devastated because she has now lost everything. Back at the house, Kaimuk and the other maids are extremely happy to be the proud owners of the house as well as everything belonging to Rongroj. They also take a new group picture to replace the one belonging to Rongroj's family. As they put the new one on the wall, they all celebrate and dance around the house with joy.